Testing 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, and today on the Tim Marner Podcast Show we have David Reid, the CEO of Birtenshaw, and also I believe author.
I've authored a few things.
Have you really?
Yeah, and I'm also the founder of Breakthrough Success.
Which is?
It's a business consultancy firm.
And is that something that you're doing? Is that a new thing that you're up to?
Yeah, I suppose over the last few years I've been so successful with Birtenshaw that I wanted to help other business owners scale up their business.
That's amazing.
It's about helping them with their mindset, helping them with their strategic plans, helping them with increasing their income and maximising their profit margins.
So let me talk about mindset to start off with, and let me talk about the book that you got coming out and what little David Reid was like.
Okay.
And what's going on. You can go. I just want to tell your story, mate. And obviously, I don't know anything about it. So. Okay.
Well, the book will be coming out sometime next year. Don't make me say a timeline because there's no way I could do that at the minute. Yeah. But the book starts with my early life, so I'd like to share that with you, really.
Yeah, definitely.
If you can sort of indulge me and come back in time with me, just imagine that you're back with me in Ireland when I was a child.
What year are we talking?
No, I don't want to give that year away, but just say a long time ago. So I was about 7 or 8 at the time. Yeah. This is one of my earliest memories. I was living in my grandmother's house, which is a big old typical Irish house back in the day when there was no central heating and no carpets on the floors and all that kind of stuff. So cold, sort of big old drafty house. So one of my earliest memories is around the time I was 7 or 8 years old, and it was nighttime. And you know those kind of times when you sometimes have bad dreams or nightmares and you're not really sure whether you're awake or whether you're asleep. Yeah. Well, I thought I was having a really bad nightmare. I felt it was suffocating. I felt as if I couldn't breathe, and I felt this massive pain inside. I couldn't really work out what it was. And then I suddenly came to it. It stopped, but I was in agony, really. I was terrified. I didn't know what was happening. But actually, it wasn't a nightmare. What had just happened was that I'd been raped by the man who was later to become my stepfather. Now, as a 7 or an 8 year old, I didn't know what had happened to me. I couldn't even put it into words, couldn't describe it. But that was really a start of a lot of things kicking off in my life, if you like. So immediately after that, as I kind of started to be able to breathe, probably again, he'd had me pushed down, face down into a pillow. I'd never met this man. My mother had been on a date and thought it was a good idea to let him stay in the house and let him stay in my room. And that's what happened to me as a result. So I kind of started to realize that I wasn't dreaming. It wasn't a nightmare, but something had happened. So this guy was slapping me around the head, called me a dirty little bastard, and it was my fault and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of is one of my earliest memories, and that has shaped my life ever since. And that's going to be the first chapter of the book, explaining what happened and what happened after that, really. The next...
I'm speechless, David, to be honest. I'm absolutely speechless, mate.
Okay.
So, go on.
A lot of people are speechless when I tell them that, because they see me as a very successful businessman heading up a multi-million pound business and kind of think life must have been easy. Yeah. But the truth was it wasn't. My childhood was pretty tough. And that was the start, really. I never met this man, as I said a minute ago. But that was the start of 4 or 5 years.
Of this continually happening to you?
Yeah, I was physically and sexually abused by him for the next 4 or 5 years. I can't be absolutely clear about when what the exact date was when it started. It's one of those things that's a bit hazy. I remember the thing, but not the date. Although I know it was around 7 or 8. But for the first few years, I did think it was my fault. I thought...
Because he made you believe that?
He told me it was my fault, and as a child, I believed him. But by the time I was sort of around 10 or 11, I started to realise that this isn't right. This shouldn't be happening and stuff like that. Still didn't really know why it was happening. I didn't really know what to do about it. But I knew it wasn't right. So from 10 until around 12, I tried to work out what the hell to do about it. And at 12 years old, I decided to go to the nearest police station, asked to speak to the senior police officer.
Why did you not talk to your mum about it?
Didn't feel I could talk to anybody.
Did you?
He'd brainwashed me. I felt it was my fault. I felt I was, as he had said, a dirty little bastard, and I'd done something to deserve it. So I felt ashamed. I was too frightened to tell anybody. But
how brave you must have been to go to the police station on your own at that age.
Yeah, I didn't think of any other option, and I thought the police would probably arrest him. So I spoke to the senior police officer, and I told him what had been going on. And his reaction was not the one I expected. I expected him to arrest me. He was by then my stepfather. I thought he would arrest him, or I don't know, do something about it. What he actually did was put me in the back of a police car, drive me back to the house, and tell my stepfather what I'd accused him of. My stepfather told him that I was a troublemaker. I was always telling lies. The police officer left the house. Excuse me. And my stepfather proceeded to beat me up to the point where I was admitted to hospital. I was in intensive care for 48 hours. I wasn't expected to live. I spent 3 months in hospital. So the police let me down. But while I was in hospital, the health services let me down. They asked what had happened, how I got so many injuries. And he told them that I'd had an argument and jumped out of the first floor window. And they believed him. School didn't ask where I was. He told school we'd moved and I'd joined another school. He put me into private school is what he told them. So school failed me. Services failed me. Social services weren't interested. Police failed me. Health service failed me. And as I say, I was lucky to survive. But that was actually the third hospital admission in 2 years. But the most serious. Anyway, after that, after 3 months when they said I could be discharged, I was taken back home, but I knew it wasn't safe. I knew I needed to get away.
How old were you at that point?
12.
12.
So at that point I stole a load of money from the house and ran away. I spent the next probably on and off 5 years living rough in Belfast. And don't forget, bearing in mind my age, this is during the time of what people refer to as the Troubles. So, I call it by what it really was, a civil war. Yeah. I was living on the streets when there was bombs going off, people shooting each other. I was living in the middle of that on the streets as a teenager. I stole stuff to survive. Thinking back, I'd call it ethical stealing. I only stole what I needed to live. I stole food and clothes and stuff to, give me some shelter and whatnot. But I never stole anything I didn't need. But I was living rough for most of my teenage years.
That's mental, that, man.
So you can imagine what a fucked up little kid I was, what a fucked up head I had at that time. That kind of led into a load of drug use, a lot of alcohol use, to try and numb the pain, the loneliness and the pain and the fear. I lived every day in fear that somebody else would hurt me or get killed. The reality was I thought any day I could get killed. It was a very scary time. Every now and again I went back and seen, so I was living rough in Belfast, which was about 12 miles away from the town that I grew up. Every now and again I went back and saw some of my mates. Occasionally went into school. But nobody really ever asked any questions about where I was or what I was doing. They all thought I was going to this posh private school somewhere else. Nobody asked any questions. It was kind of like when I was about 16, I started to think, I've got to try and somehow sort this out, and started to think about the future. But when I ran away at 12, one of the things that was in my mind really clearly was that I wanted to use my experiences. Even as a kid I knew this at 12. I wanted to use my experiences to help other people. So at 12 I made the decision I wanted to be a social worker and help other kids. I wanted to try and help kids stop them being abused. I wanted to help kids who had been abused to try and recover and find services that help them get through it. So I knew that at 12, but at 16 I was still living on the streets. I wasn't going to school. So effectively at school leaving age, I hadn't been to school, I had no qualifications or anything. And I started to think, well, how am I ever going to get to be a social worker? If I've not been to school, if no qualifications, I'm living on the street. How the hell is this ever going to happen? I made contact with one of my aunts, and she arranged to let me sleep on her floor in the living room. She had 4 kids of her own, so there wasn't really any space. But as a result of her saying I could stay there, I was able to apply for a flat. So I got my first flat at 17.
Is your mum trying looking for you or anything?
I don't know what was happening at the time. What I found out later, my mum died a few years after that. What I found out on the day of my mum's funeral was that she'd been repeatedly raped by my stepfather as well, and repeatedly beaten up by him. So she was probably terrified herself. I also found out on the day of my mum's funeral that my younger sister had been physically and sexually abused as well. But I was a bulgy little so-and-so, so I ran away. And running away was kind of like my sort of, it was the way I got out of the situation. My sister didn't feel she could leave my mum. I don't know, she knew what was going on. But she continued to experience the abuse right through until my mum died. But on the day of my mum's funeral, that's when I found out about my mum and my sister.
How did you find out on the funeral?
My sister told me at the day of the funeral. So I felt really guilty then, because I felt as if I'd abandoned them and hadn't really helped them. And then on the night of my mum's funeral, the very day that she'd been buried, my stepfather kicked my sister out of the house. So at the time, that seemed like a nightmare. Like I couldn't even look after himself. I was going to look after my sister. But it actually meant that she was getting away from the abuse at that stage as well. So looking back, Mum probably either didn't know or was too frightened to do anything. Found out after that, actually, after the funeral, I found out that he'd also raped my mother's younger sister, the one that I was staying with. And he'd abused a number of children in the community. So real high profile, prolific abuser. I didn't know any of that, obviously, when I was young. I just knew what was happening to me, and I need to get away from it or he might kill me. So yeah, anyway, going back to living on the floor in my aunt's living room. That meant I was able to get a flat. So I got my own flat at 17. Started thinking about trying to get back into education. I was still using loads of drugs and my head was still all over the place.
What sort of drugs are you using?
Pretty heavy stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I started off in cannabis, then I was using cocaine and a lot of cocaine. And that was probably the main one that I used. But as you can imagine, that really messed my head up even more. But kind of helped me deal with it at the same time.
Yeah.
But I managed to go back to school.
So you're addicted there to drugs?
Yeah, I didn't think of it at the time as being addicted. I just thought it was something I did to get through every day. But yeah, I probably was addicted. And it took me, at the point at 16, 17 when I got the flat, it took me another 10 years to get off drugs. I still drank alcohol, which is obviously a drug, but it took me another 10 years to get off everything else. Yeah. And there's quite a few times during that period where I thought a better way out would be to end it.
You said quite a lot to yourself, that.
Yeah. Throughout my teenage years, I regularly thought about suicide. Regularly. I thought it would be an easier way out. Quicker way out. Wouldn't have to live with what was going on in my head.
And obviously you've just been given the guilt by knowing that your sister and your mum
that added to it.
On top of it.
Yeah, that added to it. So on the day of my mum's funeral, I'd had the flat a few years and then I got a little house. So I was about 21 at this stage. The day of the funeral, we moved my mum in to my house. Mum's funeral, my sister moved her into my house. I went back into work the next day. I got sacked.
What were you working as?
I was working for the Northern Ireland Railways at the time. I was doing deliveries.
Yeah.
Just a basic job, but at least I was getting money coming in. I was studying on the side, trying to get some qualifications. But because of all the drug use, I was taking loads of time off work. I mean, sometimes I didn't even know it was daytime, so I wasn't going into work.
Are you just taking these drugs on your own, or have you got like some sort of community around you?
Yeah, I was just, I knew some of the dealers in the area in Belfast, right. And there's a few houses that we used to go to, and a few sort of like slums and stuff, really. So we'd kind of meet up, and none of these people were friends. You know, just people that you'd skin up with or like do whatever you're doing with. So loads of times days just passed by, and I was in such a fog. I didn't know whether it was night or day or where I was, really.
Can you remember a certain specific time where you just thought, I need to now change this around? Was there a defining moment, like a cathartic experience or anything you just thought?
Yeah. I started because when I was living rough as a teenager, I was always looking for somewhere dry and warm. And one of the things I started to do was go to a youth club that was in a church. I'm atheist. I've always kind of been atheist.
Yeah.
I kind of, even as a child, thought, how can there possibly be a God? If there was a God, the things that are happening to me wouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
Wouldn't let it happen. That was always my mentality. But nonetheless, I thought this church is warm and dry, and the good thing was they give you food.
Yeah.
So I started going there, and there was a one of the youth workers that was there. I mean, I didn't know at the time, but she was a qualified teacher. But I just saw her there as a youth worker. So I used to go and kind of chat, just get food and stuff. Started to tell her little bits and pieces, and she never judged me. She never asked too many questions.
What sort of pieces are you telling her?
I had told her that I was kind of not going to school. She didn't judge me for that. Then I told her I was stealing stuff. She didn't judge me for that. I eventually told her I was living rough. She didn't judge me for that. And I think about 8 months after I met her, I was having a conversation with her one day, and I told her about, the first time I was raped. I told her about the time I went to the police and what they did. And she listened. I really wasn't sure. She was the first person I'd ever told. I really wasn't sure, how she was going to respond. And actually her response probably was the thing that made the difference, the cathartic moment that you talked about. She looked me in the eye and she said, yeah, you've had a shit time. What are you going to do about it? Not the response I expected. But if she'd pitied me or
like sympathy
or anything like that just wouldn't have worked for me. That was the thing that really made me think, no, I decided at 12 I wanted to be a social worker and I wanted to help kids. But that was the moment where I thought, you fucking act together. Get a place to live, start getting into education, start finding a way out. It still took 10 years, 11 years.
But there's no support system back then though, is there? You kind of, like you said, just kind of got to grit your teeth. And what support system was there out there?
I suppose if I'd really known where to look, there might have been something through school or something through social services, but I was living rough. I didn't have a network. I didn't have a circle of friends, really. I couldn't really go to my family. There wasn't anything that I thought was there for me. Yeah. So I've kind of felt totally alone all those years.
Yeah. And would you say that's like one of the most horrible things, the loneliness?
The loneliness, I think, was the most frightening thing.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what would happen to me, whether I'd live for the next day. But the drugs kind of helped get through that.
Right.
Drugs and alcohol kind of helped get through that. But it was tough. It's tough. I mean, there's sometimes I didn't know what day it was, didn't know what date it was. I kind of had a sense of the seasons changing, but most of the time I was too out of it.
Because what's happened to you, how can you trust anybody else either?
Didn't feel like I trust.
I love you the most, like.
Didn't feel like I could trust anybody. But I also I felt dirty.
Yeah.
I didn't feel worthy of anybody trusting me or helping me. I felt I felt ashamed. So even if I had found somebody that could help, I couldn't have asked. I just couldn't have asked. I didn't know how to, but I just couldn't have. But that moment, that youth worker saying to me, "Yeah, you've had a shit time. What are you going to do about it?" That changed it. That was when I made the absolute decision that whatever it was going to take, didn't give a fuck what it was. I just didn't care. But whatever it was going to take, I was going to do it.
So, from then, you got yourself a house at 21, and your sister moved in with you.
Got a flat at 17, roughly 17. Moved into my house at 20.
Yeah.
And my sister moved in at 21. And that was when I started thinking to really move forward and make a difference to other people's lives. I needed to move to England. But I couldn't do that straight away.
What made you think that?
There wasn't the opportunities in Ireland. I didn't think there was an opportunity to get a job in social care. I had no qualifications, so I couldn't see any way into college. And I thought in England there would be more opportunities.
And a bit of a fresh start.
Get away from everything, yeah. Fresh start, get away from... thinking about it at the time, I was thinking it'll be a fresh start, but in reality, looking back, I was running away again.
Yeah.
Running away yet again. But I couldn't do it straight away, so I let my sister stay with me for 18 months or so until she'd started to come to terms with Mum's death and what she'd been through as well. I started trying to look for support for her. I suppose I put her first, really. And then I started talking to her about the fact that I wanted to move to England because I wanted to try and get to college.
What did she say?
She was terrified because she didn't know what would happen to her.
Yeah.
But I arranged for a distant relative to give her somewhere to live, look after her for a while. And she was able to go to college back in Ireland. So once we talked about that and she was kind of okay with it.
So you're going to do this, you're going to move to England on your own.
Yeah.
Don't know anybody.
Didn't know anybody. But I wanted to sort my sister out first, get her somewhere to live, get her into college. And then I came to England in it was January, so it was bloody cold. 60 quid in my pocket, a suitcase and a ghetto blaster.
What have you got in your head? Where are you going to go?
In my head I thought, don't know where I'm going to go, but I've lived on the streets before, so if I have to, I will. But I phoned my grandmother I actually came to Manchester. I was going to go to London. I'll tell you a story about going to London.
Yeah, go on.
A friend of mine said he wanted to move to England as well. But he was a qualified chef, so he got a job. Another friend of ours, there's a theme here about drugs. Another friend of ours had been living in London in a one-bedroom flat, but he got done for drug dealing, so he's in prison. And he said they're keeping my flat for me because my sentence is only 6 months or something, whatever it was. So he said, if you want to stay in my flat, you can. So it's one-bedroom flat, so John was going to have one room, like a bedroom or something. I was going to use the living room as a bedroom. We're going to share the kitchen and the bathroom. That was the plan. And then our mate, Jack, his girlfriend phoned. She phoned John, he was in London by this stage, and said, I've decided to come to London. I'm going to live in the flat and I'm bringing the 4 dogs. I thought, fuck. I can't live in a flat with like 2 other people. One bedroom flat, 2 other people and 4 dogs. And I thought, I'm not going to go to London with nowhere to stay. So I came to Manchester, random. I mean, up until the day before I was going to London. Booked a flight to Manchester, arrived in Manchester airport, 1 suitcase, ghetto blaster and 60 quid. From my grandmother, told her where I was and said, do we know anybody in Manchester? Do we any family here, any relatives or anything? And thankfully there was some like distant relatives, people I'd never met. But I phoned this woman, my grandmother gave me the number.
How old are you at this time?
I was about 23.
Right.
I phoned this woman, told her who I was. So she knew like the family connection, but we'd never met. I said to her, is there any chance of staying with you for a while? And she said, when? I said, well, now I'm at Manchester airport. So she sent her husband to come pick me up, let me stay with her. And she said, you can stay as long as you like, but within 3 weeks, I got 2 jobs. One was working in a nightclub in Sale as a barman, and the other was selling kitchens. Now, anybody that knows me knows I am not a practical person. I know fuck all about building kitchens or selling kitchens. I've never sold anything in my life. Anyway, they gave me a company car, so that's why I wanted the job. I wanted a car because I wanted to get to know the area and try and find somewhere to live. And I used the car not to go out trying selling kitchens, but drive around Manchester looking for somewhere to live. And I got a flat share. Once I got the flat share, then I started to think about what I was going to do next. Can we take a read?
Yeah.
Cool. I just think I'm freezing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just put it on. If you go tall or anything, mate, just split it silent.
I was aware it was getting cold and starting to shake.
Fine,
so I used this car to drive around Manchester looking for somewhere, and I got the flat share and I got a couple of jobs. And then I started thinking about, right, how do I get into social work? And at the time, there was this thing, if you were on benefits, there was, I can't remember the name of the bloody scheme, but there was some scheme that was supposed to get you into like the kind of work you wanted to do. But you had to have been unemployed for 12 months or something like that. And as you just heard, I got these couple of jobs in Manchester, so I wasn't actually unemployed. Anyway, I rocked up at this place because I just arrived from Ireland. I told them I'd been unemployed for 12 months, and they didn't check, so they let me join the scheme. And then I found out it was mostly for people. It was mostly girls who wanted to do hairdressing or boys that wanted to do mechanics. I thought, I don't want to fucking be a mechanic or a hairdresser. So I told the people that were running the scheme I wanted to be a social worker and I wanted to get into social care. And they said, we haven't got anything like that. I said, well, I'll create it. I'll create it for you. So I did.
What?
I actually created a scheme for this like unemployment service. It was like a job centre thing. So I researched it.
How were you researching it?
Just back then, this was before the internet and all that kind of shit. So Yellow Pages, mate. Got the old Yellow Pages out looking for social care organisations, charities, all that kind of stuff. People that supported children in particular, because that was my area of interest. Then I started phoning them. But when I was phoning them, I was actually pretending that I was a representative of this scheme rather than somebody that was looking for a job.
Very good.
So I got a number of private organisations that were running social care services, and a number of charities signed up. So this job scheme was able to bring in other unemployed people and then offer them placements in social care as a result of what I did. But the idea was that you still stayed on your benefits, so you got your benefits plus expenses, bus fares and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of set that up, and then I contacted the agencies who'd agreed to be part of it. I went out to one of them one day, and I turned up and I introduced myself and I said that I was from this scheme, whatnot, this job scheme. But I said I was looking for a placement for myself. And I said, I was talking to the deputy manager of the service. The manager wasn't there, and it was the manager I dealt with to set the service up. The deputy manager didn't seem to know anything about it. So the way I phrased it was, this has all been organised and agreed. I'm your new placement. So he didn't actually know that it wasn't agreed. So he just kind of said, yeah, all right. What is it you're going to do? I said, well, I've got to work for you full time for at least 6 months. So he just put me on the rota, and I started the next day. No checks. No, I don't know how they got around the regulations back then. Maybe it wasn't as strict as it is now. So for 6 months, I was officially on the scheme, claiming benefit. So I'd given up, the other 2 jobs at this stage. I was getting my benefits. I was able to walk to this job. I wasn't being paid for it, but I was able to walk to it from a flat share. But the scheme said I had to claim bus fares. So to get to it by bus, I would have had to get this was out in Disbury, and the placement was in Birtenshaw. I had to get a bus from Disbury into Manchester and a bus from Manchester back out to Birtenshaw every day, both ways. So I claimed the bus fares. Yeah, but I walked it. It took me 10 minutes to walk it, but I had to claim the bus fares every day. And then they give me an extra tenner a week for, expenses. But then because this placement I got was a charity, and then it was on benefits, they were giving me food. So when I was working, they fed me, and then they gave me food to take home, and I was getting my extra tenner, and I was getting my extra bus fares. I thought that's an easy life. So for 6 months, I was effectively working full time without any pay.
Which is a scheme that you've set up?
I set the scheme up.
And then now you're...
And then I was I was the first social care placement on the scheme. And it was through...
What was the scheme called?
I can't remember the name of it. This is over 20 years ago, Tim. I mean... It was like a job centre scheme for unemployed people, for anybody being... Yeah. I think you had to be under 30 and unemployed for 12 months or more. But as I say, it was mostly fellas that were interested in being a mechanic and girls that were interested in being hairdressers. So I set it up for social care.
So what kind of thing are you doing?
The placement that I had was working in what was in those days called a halfway house for young offenders. Yeah. So it was all like 16 and 17-year-old lads who were kind of on the edges of like getting sent to prison or drug dealing and all that kind of stuff. And it was about trying to work with them and support them, get them back into college or back into an apprenticeship, or just keeping them, giving them somewhere to live, but also trying to get them back on the right path, really. I absolutely loved it. I loved going in there. So although I was supposed to be doing 37 hours free, I normally did 50, 60 hours a week. I just absolutely loved it. At the end of the 6 months, the scheme was supposed to finish. But because I set the scheme up, I didn't actually tell them that. So they didn't know it was supposed to finish. So I just carried on doing it. So 9 months in, a job came up. I applied for it and got a paid job in the same place, doing the same thing. So I moved from being like unemployed, getting the extra kind of tenner a week or whatever it was, to getting like a proper salary. So it was then classed, back in those days, it was classed as a residential social worker. You're not allowed to use that term anymore, just call them support workers.
Why? What's the reason for that?
The term social worker is now a protected job, protected title. Right. So you have to be qualified to use the term social worker. But back then they were called residential social workers because these young people lived there. It was their home kind of thing. So I used to do like late shifts and early shifts and sometimes sleep over. But then when I got on the contract, I was being paid a proper wage. Can't remember what it was now, but to me it was decent money. And I thought like I was doing social work. I wasn't. I was a support worker, but I still thought it was social work. But it was the start of the career that I wanted. What is the difference
between a social worker and a support worker then?
Social worker is somebody who's been to college or university. These days it's a 3-year degree course. Yeah. So you're a qualified social worker. Then you have to register with the General Social Care Council, and you have to keep up your qualifications and demonstrate that your level of practice meets a certain standard. And generally social workers, qualified social workers, work for local authorities and do things like child protection work and court work and that kind of stuff. Support workers work in residential services or daycare services, and they're more kind of a helper rather than somebody that's dealing with all the legal stuff that social workers deal with. So I wasn't dealing with the legal stuff or any court stuff. I was just dealing with these young men who were using drugs, or by this stage I'd stopped using drugs, so I kind of knew what they were going through to some extent. Some of them had been homeless, so I knew about that. Some of them
you're on your experience here, right?
Yeah, I was using my experience to try and support them.
What was your most sort of like rewarding from that time? Can you remember the sort of most rewarding?
Yeah, at the time, every day there was little things that you could see where there was a change, or like somebody had a light bulb moment and something changed in their life, or they made a decision to go to college, or they made a decision to like contact their mum again after not speaking for years, or contact their dad or whatever it might have been. Little things like that. But actually it was only a few years afterwards when some of those young men who by this stage were maybe 20 or 22 contacted me and said, I went to college and I did this, or I'm a qualified mechanic now, or I'm married now, I've got my own place, I've got a kid. When you hear stories like that a couple of years later, it's kind of like, God, that really shows it was making a difference. It was hard to tell.
It says a lot, doesn't it? Just like somebody just believing in you, just one time, just kind of saying, just giving you that thing that it's going to be all right, or just giving you that little tiny bit of hope. But you've never really had that.
Well, that youth worker in the church gave me that. that one time. And I wanted to be that person to give that to these young men that I was working with.
That's true.
And a few months after I was given a contract, I then became a manager. And I did that for about 2 years in that service, and then I moved to a more senior management role in another kind of organisation, still working with kids.
Are you changing, when you're doing this, are you changing any processes that they've got in place that you think, you know what, we can actually do this a bit better?
Yeah, I'm a bullshit kind of bastard. When I see something that I think's not working, I don't hold back. I just say, I don't think that's working because, and this is what I think you should do. So there's a thing within like residential social care, if I can use that term. So like children's homes and places that people live where they can't live with their family or whatever. There's a thing called the key work system. So there's always like one named person. Now, when I started doing that job back then, there was no processes or systems in place. The key workers like had a chat with these people, but there was no focus to it. There was no written records about what they talked about, what the purpose was. So I set a system up where you looked at themes, and the themes were connected to what was going on in those young people's lives, whether it was about their drug use or their offending behaviour, but sort of looked at it in a thematic way, and set it up so that those meetings had to take place, those discussions had to take place weekly, but kept them informal, kept them kind of friendly, not where like a young person was told you've got to come in and talk about this or that or the other. So set a system up, but allowed it to be flexible enough so that I mean, for example, one of the key ways I did it was taking kids out from McDonald's. Other fast foods are available, folks, but you know, McDonald's is the one that most of them seem to like. So we just went for McDonald's and had a chat. So as far as they were concerned, they were just having a chat with somebody that they knew was interested in them, somebody that gave a shit about them, somebody that was talking to them about their life, what was going on in their life, not trying to tell them what to do, but find out what they were interested in. So from their point of view, that's what was happening.
Do you take the same approach as what that lady did with you? Because I feel like she knew what to say to you, because I knew that she didn't want to talk sympathetic. She needed to give you the sort of hard truth. And every person needs talking to differently, like in business. You know, I manage everybody. I can't talk to one person the way I talk to another one. And she knew what you needed to hear right there and then. I
think you're right, Tim. Over those 8 months or whatever before, I mean, I plucked up the courage to tell her what was really going on. I think she got to know the kind of personality that I am. Yeah. And that was the approach I took with those young men in that first kind of job that I had in social care. I tried to find out what made them tick, how they worked. Yeah. And some of them did need an arm around the shoulder and somebody to say, look, I'm here for you. It's going to be okay.
It's a skill set, that, mate, isn't it?
I didn't see it as a skill at the time. I didn't even know it was a skill. Yeah. I was interested in people. I was interested in young people in particular. The pain I'd gone through, I didn't want other people to feel that. And if they were going through that pain, I wanted to take it away. And for me, that's what I was doing. It wasn't about using skills. It was about just being there for them, talking about whatever they wanted to talk about, but trying to also steer it in a different direction. Try to get them to think about, you know, what's going to make it a bit better for them. You know, maybe trying to cut back a bit on the drugs, or stop on the drugs, or getting into an apprenticeship, or going to college, or, you know, just giving them planting little seeds of like positive thinking and try to help them reframe the stuff that's going on in their mind.
Stuff they never thought of before, a kind of different perspective on what they were already thinking.
Because I know when I was in that position, it felt hopeless. Yeah. And as I said a while ago, I often thought about taking my own life, and I know a lot of those young men thought the same. They thought it was hopeless. They thought they were worthless. They thought they had no future. The way I talked to them was always, doesn't matter what you've been through, you have a future. What do you want that future to look like? You need to shape it. So helping them reframe their own thinking. And I'm not saying it was easy, and I'm not saying it was like it happened there and then, you know, one conversation, it was done. And sometimes, you know, you're talking to these young men for months before you saw any change at all. Sometimes it was years later before I realised that anything. I remember getting a phone call from a lad called Sean. And he started the conversation by saying who he was, and I was thinking, fuck, who is this? And then,
it clicked.
God, 5 or 6 years ago, since I worked with him, at the time he contacted me. And he said, the conversation started like this. He said, do you remember that Tuesday night in September when you were cooking chili? I went, no. Apparently, while I was cooking chili, he was helping me. I was cooking chili for all the lads that lived in this halfway house, as it was called. So we just, the support workers like myself, we helped them cook. That was one of our tasks. I mean, I can't cook for love nor money, but I give it a go. It was more about the interaction, actually. So he remembered this Tuesday night or whatever it was that he said. And we were cooking chili, and he was able to describe what the weather was like. He was able to tell me who was there. And then he said to me, and you said something to me that's changed my life forever.
That was his cathartic moment.
And I thought, really? God, I don't even remember what I said. And it was just that there is hope. And apparently that was the thing that changed his outlook on life. But I didn't know at the time. I mean, I was oblivious. I just carried on cooking.
That's got to feel like that, mate.
Hearing it 6 years later felt, it kind of almost brought a tear to my eye, definitely felt good. But yeah, we're working through all of that and changing systems as I went. And I think that's how I got promoted into management roles so quickly, because I was setting up systems and processes and making it easier for other workers to support people. But I was also getting really frustrated, because I used to think, why can other people not do this the way I'm doing it? Why can they not see what I see? Why do they not have the kind of conversations I'm having with young people?
Do you think that's because of a lot of people have been to college or wherever, and they've kind of fitted into that mould and a lot of red tape with it, where you're looking at it from a total different perspective here? You're actually seeing people as individuals and not just I
think some people that get into this kind of work, into social care, if they've come in through college, they've been taught certain processes or systems that they think they have to go through as a tick box exercise. Yeah. And actually some people get into social care work because they want a decent salary, but they can't get into any other kind of work. Yeah. And it's fairly easy to get into because there's a national shortage of staff in these kind of jobs. But sometimes they don't even like young people, and they don't engage. They're not people. They don't engage well with others. They don't try to find out. They're more interested in telling the other person about them or what their issues are. They're not interested in finding out about the other person. So different kind of approach. I wasn't there for me or my career. I was there because I wanted to change lives. I wanted to transform lives. And when I first got into it, I kind of thought, if it takes me the rest of my life to change one life, that'll be enough. But I now know I've changed thousands of lives, in my career. Talk about transforming lives, really.
And do you ever sit and think to yourself and kind of give yourself that self-esteem to kind of go, you know what, I have done that? Have you ever already sat down and appreciated that?
It took an awful long time for me to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, even when I was getting promoted into more senior management roles, I used to think, I don't really deserve this. Yeah. That voice inside was still telling me,
you're not worthy.
I'm not worthy. This shouldn't be happening to me. I'm a dirty little bastard, as I was told when I was first raped. So I still felt that everything that was happening to me, I didn't deserve. But the more my career progressed, if you like, and the better salary I got and the better life got for me, the more I felt I had to give. So the harder I worked and the more people I wanted to support, because I almost felt guilty that my life was getting easier when other people were still having a shit time. But then there came like a block where I got into management roles, but then I couldn't go any further, and I was getting frustrated because I was seeing other people not really having good relationships with the people who were supporting, or not making a difference, or not kind of achieving the things I was achieving, and I wanted to help them do that. And the only way I thought I could do that was to go to college and get a qualification, and that was in social work, and then become a more senior manager, so I had greater influence. Power hungry, I suppose. I wanted to have power. I wanted to have the power to change things, and I thought becoming a social worker was the way to do it. Boy, was I wrong. But anyway, I'll talk about that maybe in a bit. So I contacted Manchester Met to find out how I go about becoming a qualified social worker. So they asked me what qualifications I had. That was an easy question to answer. None. Well, you need qualifications. I said there must be another way. And they said the only other way is what they call experiential learning, and you need to put a portfolio together, and there's all these like criteria, and you need to demonstrate you've done certain things in an actual job role.
Like what kind of things?
Things like supporting people through a crisis, or
but have you not done that within?
I had done a lot of that, but I didn't know that I needed to write it all down and say how I had done it and put a portfolio together. So they told me all of I think there was like 12 topics, and each topic was broken down into like subtopics and stuff. I mean, this is a long time ago, so I can't really remember all the detail. But what they said to me was, if you start now, I think I was having this conversation in July or something like that, of whatever year it was. They said if you start now, you'll be able to get the portfolio done within about 12 months, and you might be able to be considered for admission next September. I said, no. September this September. How do I get in this September? I want this done and dusted. They said it's not possible to do it that quickly. I said, I'll be the judge of that. You tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. Just tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. So within six weeks, I'd completed the portfolio. I'd looked back at all the stuff I'd done in the past year. At that stage, I had a few years' experience working in social care. And I was able to contact a few people that I'd worked with and get like witness statements.
How do you know what you're doing?
In terms of the portfolio?
Well, putting it all together, where do you go to research? And
well, they give you the headings and all the different...
But you've got no qualifications.
No.
You've got nothing.
No.
How do you wrap your... Because my head would just fall off. How do you wrap your head around doing that?
Do you know what? When I started it, I still had that thing in my head because I hadn't really been to school and had no qualifications. And actually, one of the other things that happened to me as a kid was I'm naturally left-handed.
Yeah.
And at my age, back when I was a child in Ireland, very Catholic country, being left-handed was considered sinful.
What?
So we used to get caned on our left hand when we tried to use our left hand. So as a kid, as I was trying to learn to write, I was always getting caned. So I had to try and use my right hand. It didn't.
I've never heard that before in my life.
Talk to anybody who's a left-hander my age, what happened to them in Ireland. That's a common thing. Any Catholic country, it probably happened back then because it was seen as sinful. Don't know why it was seen as sinful, but just bloody was.
Because you like the devil or something.
Yeah.
Devil's inside.
I have no idea at all. But it's what they did. So because I had to try and write with my right hand, it was pretty shocking, and it's still to this day my handwriting is virtually illegible. But because of that, people thought I was stupid, and I got told at school I was stupid, like in primary school. So even from primary school, I thought I was stupid. So when I started this portfolio, I thought I'm not going to be able to understand this. I'm not going to understand what they're talking about. I'm not going to understand what I need to do. I'm too stupid. But as I started to read it, I thought this just makes sense. When I was talking about supporting people through a crisis, I was thinking, God, I've done that so many times, and all I have to do is describe what I did. Easy. So I just literally looked at each section and thought, what does that mean? Tried to work it out in my head and okay, I don't know if I'm right, but that's what I think it means, so that's what I'm going to do. And I went back to people I worked with. I contacted people I'd supported. I asked them for witness statements, put all the stuff together, and it just seemed so easy. And I thought, I must be doing it wrong. It can't be this easy to get into university or get into college. And it was a university course I was applying for. It can't be this easy. But I took it back 6 weeks later, didn't hear anything until the start of September, and had been accepted on the course. So 6 weeks portfolio, got accepted.
Something that should have took you 12 months.
Something they said would take at least 12 months. Yeah. I did in 6 weeks.
Knowing to them, they didn't know the experience that you've had with him there.
Well, they didn't really ask the questions, so they didn't know what I was going to be able to put in it. But I suppose they were looking at it as somebody starting from nothing and gathering the evidence, if you like, over the 12 months, whereas I wrote up stuff that I'd done in the past couple of years as evidence. So I got on the course, and it was delivered. It was overseen by Manchester Met.
What are you doing that? What are you doing for money?
I was still working. Yeah, I was still working full time.
And do that as well, right?
So I put the portfolio together just in spare time in those 6 weeks. But then when I went to college itself, it was a Manchester Met course, but it was delivered at Stockport College. But I only had to go in, get this, a full-time course. I only had to go in 4 hours a week. 4 hours a week, full-time course. So the only time that was different was when I had to do my social work placement. And I had 2 of those to do. One was for 6 weeks and the other was, I think it was 3 months. So I arranged with my job to have unpaid time off. So I went and did some bar work when I was doing my placement. That was the course, 2 lectures. And then you had to put loads of like evidence together and do loads of assignments and stuff. And on day 1, they were talking about assignments. And I was thinking, I don't know what an assignment is. And then somebody said, like essays, you got to write 5,000 and 6,000 word essays. I was thinking, shit, never even written a shopping list, let alone bloody assignment. How am I going to do this? But then I started going to the lectures, and these lectures started talking about stuff. And I remember one of the first lectures, I think it was the second day, I was sitting near the front of the lecture hall, and this lecturer started talking. And I was thinking, what is this? So I'm looking around me thinking, what's going on? Because it just sounded really dead simple. I thought, I'm here to learn. I don't want you to be talking to me about your life. I'm here to learn. You know, I didn't really know what to expect, to be honest. I was looking around the room and I could see everybody else furiously writing notes down. I was thinking, there isn't anything here that's stimulating me.
You don't already know.
I just don't get what this is about. And I started talking to some of the other people on the breaks and stuff who were on the course, and they were saying, God, this is really tough. I'm struggling to keep up. I don't really understand what they're saying. And I'm thinking, I think this is so simple. I think it's so simple. First assignment, I thought, I'll just give it a go. I'll do my best. You only had to get 40 to pass. First assignment, I think I got 60 something. I thought, shit, how'd you do that? And then as my confidence started to grow, I thought maybe I'm not as stupid as I was told, and maybe I can do this. And I ended up getting really good marks for all of my assignments. So back then, becoming a qualified social worker was just a 2-year college course linked to university. And by the end of it, I thought, do you know what? That was fairly easy, and I was able to do it and still work and still do everything else I was doing. I thought, fuck it, I might as well just do another year and get a degree. So I transferred to University of Central Lancaster to top it up for 1 year, and that was the first degree that I did. So I only had to go to college for 8 months, university for 8 months to top that up to the degree level. So this kid who was told he was stupid at school and who didn't really go to school as a teenager and left school without qualifications got a first class degree. And then I got the bug for learning, and I've been to university, a number of different universities since then. And I've got a number of different degrees.
Like what? Tell me the degrees you've got.
Well, that one was the top on the social work course up. So that was social work and community studies. Then I did a psychology degree. Then I did a psychology's master's. Then I did a master's in pediatric health. Then I did a PhD in strategic leadership within the volunteering community sector. Then I did a PhD in advanced management techniques. So a
guy who can't even write.
A guy who, if you looked at my writing, you'd think I'm stupid because I can't write, and was told I was stupid.
Fuck, mate, that is next level, that.
So I've got like 6 degrees, two bachelors, 2 masters, 2 PhDs.
What after you've got like your first degree, your master's degree, what are you thinking for yourself then?
Well, when I did the first bachelor's degree, my idea was that would help me open doors and progress my career to become a senior manager. And to be fair, it did. But I was still working for local authorities. After I became a qualified social worker, I worked at Salford, and then I worked for Blackpool and then Blackburn. So I was still working for local authorities and still progressing up the career ladder. But I was still really, really frustrated that so many other people, including qualified social workers, to me didn't seem to be doing a good job. They didn't seem to be really making a difference to anybody that they were supposedly working with. So I mean, I was getting frustrated with that and getting frustrated with the fact that I couldn't really change. I could change what I was doing. I could implement new systems for me and my teams, but I couldn't do it wholesale.
To do that, what does that take to do it wholesale?
Well, for me, what that meant was getting to the point where the frustration overtook my desire to still work as a social worker and work in a local authority. And that's when I stepped out and decided to run my own business, providing care services and therapy services and education services.
How the hell do you do that?
Being a bossy little so-and-so that doesn't really have a sense of fear.
Which is living on the streets has taught you.
Well, living on the streets taught me you're going to feel fear, but if you let it stop you, you'll be paralyzed. So I've throughout my life felt fear in many ways, doing many things, but I've never let it stop me do anything. I'd never run a business before. I didn't know how to run a business, but I thought running a business means I can do it my way. And if I mess it up, it's my fault. If it's a success, that's down to me and the team.
So what's the first step?
So the first step was to resign and take over an organisation called Birtenshaw.
What do you do?
So this is in 2006. Birtenshaw in 2006 was technically bankrupt. But because, although it's a company and like a standard business, like any other business, it also has a charity registration. So because it had a charity registration, although it was technically bankrupt, nobody forced it into administration, but it should have been. So for the first 6 years, day in, day out, it was about trying to... Oh, let me tell you this. In the first year, I had a turnover of 1 million. Now, that's not bad for any organisation, any business in the first year. How much of that do you think might have been profit?
Go on, sorry.
Grand total of a loss of 240,000.
Really?
So I come out of a secure local authority job, good salary, good pension, and in my first year made a loss of 240,000. Didn't I do bloody well?
Excited,
I was well excited because what I was doing day in, day out was looking at how do I reduce the expenditure? How do I increase the income? How do I develop?
Know this, Dave, because you've not got any business qualifications.
No, I know.
How are you learning all this?
Like I learned everything else to start with as I did it.
Just getting books. Internet's
Get
not there,
stuck in. 2006, it was just starting.
Yeah.
We had a few computers around at that stage. It was well before everybody had a computer in front of them. But yeah, the internet was around. I mean, you still had to do the old those things that sounded like funny alien noises. It took ages to get that logged on and stuff. But yeah, you could look things up. But it wasn't anything like Google searches these days where you can find out anything and go on YouTube to do how to set up a business. It would have been good if I could have done that back then. I really hadn't got a clue. But what I knew was I needed to deliver a quality service that was going to transform lives. I also knew I needed to charge a fair price, but a price that was going to create a profit
margin.
Just to
let everybody know, Dave, what Birtenshaw was back then, just to let everybody know what was Birtenshaw back
then. When I took it over, it was operating as a small school and a very small children's home for young people with significant physical impairment, severe learning disability, and other related conditions. Yeah. I've repositioned it since then. We're now a learning disability and autism specialist provider. The organisation itself had been set up in 1956, and as I say, it did have a charity registration, but it was registered as a company's house, just the same as any other business, but it was technically bankrupt. So there were some children attending the school and some children who were living in the children's home that was operated at the time. And I think actually the reason I took over a business rather than start one was because I thought taking over one would be easier. Actually, once I got into it and I started to learn just what a mess it was in, it would have been easier to start it from scratch. Because if it had been started from scratch, I would have been looking at, selling a service or a product, trying to make some money. But actually what I was trying to do was recover a deficit. It was operating at a loss. It took me 6 years to get to the point where the business turned around. Those first few years particularly were really hard work. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was learning as I went. I was making loads of mistakes. But you know what? The only failure is when you give up. I don't mind people making mistakes. I don't mind making mistakes myself. I don't ever like making the same mistake twice. But if I make a mistake, I pick myself up and I see it as a learning experience. What the fuck did I learn from failing there? Yeah. What can I do differently next time? What can I do better next time? So there was a lot of that in those first few years. I didn't really know how to manage budgets. I didn't know how to create management accounts. I didn't know how to pitch to people to sell the service. I didn't even know how to price the service. I didn't know what its value was. I didn't know what my value was. It's fair to say, didn't really have a clue. Didn't know what I was doing with anything. But yeah, I started to reduce the kind of loss, if you like. And by year 6, it was just about breaking even. In 2008, 2009, I was still making a significant loss, but I secured an investment of $8.5 million. You think about it, like an organization that's turnover is about $1.5 million at this stage, making a loss, able to secure an investment 8 times its turnover.
How did you get that investment?
By not taking no for an answer, being bullshit again, going back to my days on the street, living on my wits. I approached various banks. All the commercial banks said no. By this stage, I'd heard there were things called social lenders. I thought they might be interested. They were. I also found out that the government had set up like an investment house or an investment company for organisations that provided social care, particularly in the kind of area and the space that I was working in, for organisations that were in a pretty difficult financial position and couldn't really get investment elsewhere. So most of this investment, it wasn't like grants or anything like that. This was investment loan and had to be paid back. So, talking about feeling the fear, I thought, I'm taking on $8.5 million investment, 8 million of which was a loan. How the bloody hell am I going to pay this back? I'm still making a loss. How am I going to pay it back? Terrified me. It absolutely terrified me. But I knew that if I didn't do it, I couldn't reposition the business. I couldn't turn it around enough to secure its future. And I don't really know how I actually secured it, other than the fact that I refused to take no for an answer. If somebody said no, I really hassled them. I said, why are you saying no? Why are you telling me that these disabled children do not deserve a good service? So I guilt tripped them. And in the end, I secured, it was like a couple of different entities that came together. So I got $1 million from a commercial bank. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on this podcast, am I? NatWest. I got another $1 million from a private lender who doesn't want to be named. And then I got the rest from what was called Future Builders England, which was this government thing that had been set up. But it was still a loan, and I still had to pay it back, and I still had to arrange terms to pay it back. But securing that in 2008, when I was still making a loss, enabled me to start building a brand new Birtenshaw. And I'm talking about physically.
What was your vision at that point? What are you going to do with that 8 million?
My vision at that time was to build a new head office and a new bespoke state-of-the-art special school and create 3 new children's homes so that it transformed the lives of at least 20 children with special needs, special education need or disability. So my vision was to simply build physical services, physical spaces that would transform the lives of 20 children. That was as far as my vision went at that time. It's changed dramatically since then, but at that time, that's what it was. So I secured the investment in 2008, but I actually didn't get it until 2010. And there was an issue with timing and when it had to be drawn down. But one of the complicating factors was that they wouldn't allow me to buy the land that I needed to build on until I secured planning permission. So I had to apply for planning permission. I eventually got it, but because of where it was, I needed that to be signed off by the Secretary of State for Community, so it took a long time.
I don't even know how you didn't even do that. You had to just fall off.
I didn't even know there was a Secretary of State for Communities. I didn't know what it was. And when they told me I had to go and talk to a government minister, I thought, shit, what am I going to wear? That was my first thought. What am I going to wear? What do you wear when you go to government, go to Westminster? Because I'd never been before at that stage. Been a few times since. Passed a few more of them since. But back then I thought, bloody hell, what am I going to do? And do I have to speak with an English accent? Will he be able to understand me? Anyway, I had to go and speak to him. I got the planning permission and stuff. But the complicating factor then was that once the planning permission was in place, the person that was supposed to be buying the land off, who had agreed to sell it to me because it was redundant agricultural land. They'd agreed to sell it to me for 50,000. Once the planning permission was in place, they said 1.1 million, please. So I kind of went, fuck off. And then there was a whole series of discussions to try to get the price down to something that we could actually achieve. I eventually was able to agree 475,000 for the land, but that meant taking one classroom off the proposed school. So I knew that it meant that I couldn't reach as many disabled children or provide a service for as many disabled children as I wanted to.
Are you having like sleepless nights while this is all happening? How are you managing your kind of stress levels and stuff?
I think at that point the alcohol use went up quite a bit.
Did it?
And I think I started to get a number of physical illnesses, which at the time I didn't realize were connected to the stress. Yeah. I started having problems with my digestive system and, like acid reflux and all that kind of stuff. And I needed to get medication and stuff for that. So I suppose it was just a level of stress that I wasn't really aware that it was managing, or maybe not managing. I wasn't aware it was affecting me. But it clearly was. I wasn't sleeping very well.
A lot of pressure, that, isn't it?
It's huge pressure, but I kept thinking, it's about the kids. The kids deserve this. It doesn't matter about me.
You've had that since you're 12. You've had that driving force since you were 12.
I think the driving force is I've always thought it's other people. I'm doing this for others. I've always felt I've got to do it for them. If I don't do it for them, who's going to do it? If I don't achieve it, if I don't succeed, what's going to happen to them? And actually there's lots of children in the UK with special education needs and disability who still don't get the services that they need. And back then I was thinking, I just want to transform the lives of at least 20. That was the driving force. I knew it wouldn't last forever. I knew the pressure wouldn't last forever. I just hoped that I could get through it. And I was having like, people call them panic attacks, don't they? When you have that sensation of your heart going like far too fast and that kind of like dizziness and stuff. I was getting that all the time. And I was feeling sick all the time. Sometimes I could eat, but then I would throw up. And other times I felt sick and I couldn't eat, not sleeping well. But I thought, it doesn't matter. I've just got to do it. Just got to get through it. So that was difficult to get the land secured. And, this person who'd agreed to sell it to us for 50 grand and then said 1.1 million, and we eventually agreed 475. But that meant I knew I needed to take one classroom off to be able to afford the building. But the timeline of doing all of that meant that we almost lost the investment. There was a final date that we had to have things legally agreed by, which was the 31st of March 2010.
Who's doing all this then? Just you, or have you got?
By this stage, you got lawyers involved. So by 2010, I had brought in a finance manager, director of finance into Birtenshaw, who's a chartered accountant. So I'd managed to change the financial position enough to be able to afford to employ another senior member of staff. But for the first, that was 2009, 2010.
Did you see yourself as a businessman back then?
No, I still saw myself as a social worker. Still saw myself as somebody who wanted to have a positive impact on the lives of children. But I knew, any social worker will say this, it's a standing joke. Social workers, we don't do numbers. So I thought, I can't write and I can't do numbers either, but I need somebody to come in and do the numbers. But it changed the financial position enough to be able to afford a senior manager at this point. So for those first 4 years, it was just me and all the frontline staff. I didn't have a management team. It literally was just me, no management team at all. But by 2010, I was able to appoint a finance director. And that was actually sort of essential to be able to manage this kind of investment as well. You know, I wouldn't have known how to produce like reports and stuff on how that money was being managed. I wouldn't have had a first clue how to do that. But the deadline was 5 p.m. on the 31st of March 2010. But because of the issues with the sale or the purchase of the land from our perspective, it had kind of drifted. So on the 31st of March, everything hadn't been signed off. And the deadline was 5 o'clock. And at 5:05, I made a phone call to our lawyer to say, it hasn't happened. We haven't got the agreement. Whole thing's fallen through. And while I was on the phone with the lawyer to say it had all fallen through, my finance director came running into my room. It's just come through. It's just come through. It's just come through. So although 5 o'clock was the deadline, a couple of minutes after 5, it came through. So that was the green light to start the construction of what became Birtenshaw School in Bolton, in Bromley Cross, the new building. And on that site, we've also got a hydrotherapy centre and the head office for the organisation.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And that was completed in June 2012. And in June 2012, everything about Birtenshaw changed. We had a state-of-the-art building to deliver a quality service that could accommodate up to 50 children. That was what it was designed to accommodate at the time. Just so you know, there's 60 children in it now. So it was designed for 50, but there's 60 in it. But that's because we've converted cupboards into classrooms, and we've converted storage spaces into offices. With a building that's only 7 years old, it was supposed to last at least 25.
It's amazing, mate. I love the place.
I mean, you've been, you've seen it.
Amazing, mate.
And you've seen how many children we get into
like
that building.
Said, if that wasn't there, what would happen to these kids?
They probably wouldn't have a service, to be honest. And the impact of that is that some of them would end up with mental health issues at a young age. Some of them, it would lead to their families disintegrating and falling apart, their families needing mental health services. So because that service is there and we're transforming their lives, we're also transforming their families' lives. So my vision was, back then, was 20. But I've just told you, in the school in Bolton, we're now supporting 60 children and their families. So that's 3 times more than my original vision. But that's not all that Birtenshaw does. But yeah, that was the kind of turning point, this state-of-the-art building. And by then, I'd started to build relationships with various local authorities. Don't forget, I came from a local authority background, so I was able to talk to local authorities in their speak, you know, the language that they used, and
which is a big thing.
If you can talk to people the way they understand, you know,
how they want,
you just, it's kind of like mirroring their behaviour, mirroring their language in a way. But because I'd been a senior manager in a local authority before I took that step out, I was able to convince them that it was going to be a quality service, and I did know what I was doing. I didn't really, but I was able to convince them that I did. And by continually talking to them, more local authorities started to talk about placing children in the school. But when the school opened in September 2012, I'd opened 3 children's homes in the community. Those children's homes supported 9, maybe 10 children. I can't remember back then, but 9 or 10 at most. But when the school opened in 2012, it supported 12 children. There were only 12 children on the roll. And we had to think about how to increase the income fairly rapidly, because don't forget, I'd just taken on 8 million of loan investment that I needed to repay. But since 2012, Birtenshaw has now grown by 400% in those 6-7 years. Any business growing 400% is phenomenal.
Wow.
But from an organisation that was making a loss in my first year of 240,000 to one that's now making a healthy profit, which doesn't go to shareholders. It's what I call profit for purpose. It's reinvested back into the business to support even more children and young people. But that 2012 date was the turning point. Since then, we've grown. We've moved into supporting young adults. We've opened a college here in Bolton. We've opened care services for young adults. We've increased the number of children's homes. There's now 8. We run a community cafe on Crompton Way. And on that same site, we have an accessible gym. We have a small animal small holding, a day service for young adults. And then more recently, we've expanded across the Northwest. In 2018, we opened a similar but an even more improved version of a school. So we took all of the learning from developing we were involved in the design of the school in Bolton, and taking all of our learning from that, we were able to work with a design team in Liverpool, and that was a joint venture with Liverpool City Council. So it's the first joint venture of its kind in the UK. So Birtenshaw didn't have to look for capital finance. We didn't have to put money in. No money down. It's one of those no money down deals. Liverpool City Council put all the money into it, but we used our expertise and our knowledge of what works for children with learning disability and autism to create an even better school environment. And that school opened in September 2018. On day one, there were 23 children on the roll. By the end of the first year, that had gone up to 35. September this year, September 19, we started with 52 or 53 children on the school roll. As we talk today, there are 71 children. When we opened the school in September 2018, we registered it with the Department for Education for 50 children. We didn't think we'd get anywhere close to 50 children until about 4 or 5 years. Last year in May, we had to go back to the Department for Education and ask them to increase the registered number. The maximum capacity in the building was 80, so we thought, well, to hell with it, we'll just ask for the 80. We're now on 71 children as we speak.
Wow.
There are children waiting to come in. We're trying to recruit more staff to allow that. So we know that roughly between the winter break and the spring break, or some people would say Christmas and Easter, we know that school will be full. But when we started that partnership with Liverpool City Council, they were talking about secondary school age boys as their priority, and they said that would be the kind of children that would be placed in the school. It's not. It's mostly primary school age children. It's a mixture of boys and girls, but the majority of them are 6 or 7 or 8 years old, and that school is going to be at capacity before it gets to the end of its second year. Now that's good for those children who can now get a service in their home city. But the downside is that because they're so young, none of them will be leaving for the next 10 or 12 years. So by next summer, we will have no capacity to offer any more children a service in Liverpool, and yet we've only just opened. And that was supposed to be a service that would not get full for 5 or 6 years. So we're already looking for either Liverpool City Council to look at another joint venture with us, or investors who are willing to look at helping us to develop another school or a college in Liverpool. And in fact, our vision, so you asked me what the vision was, it was to transform the lives of 20 children. The vision now is to transform the lives of every child in the UK who's got learning disability or autism. I want Birtenshaw to have a school in every local authority area. I want us to have children's homes in every local authority area. I want us to be absolutely at the forefront of a movement that recognises that children with learning disability and autism do not always get the services that they need to thrive, and that when they do get those services, their lives are completely transformed, their families' lives are completely transformed. I want Birtenshaw to be at the forefront of that. I want us to become a national organisation, not because I want us to be the biggest organisation or whatever, the biggest company in the UK, but because I know by doing that, we will transform more lives. That's now the vision.
Your goals never changed, does it? It's just helping people out.
Still about helping people, but I think I had some limiting beliefs in the past.
Yeah.
And I thought I could only help this many.
And was that limiting beliefs in yourself that you thought that?
Yeah.
But now you've kind of become a bit more proud of yourself and you know what you're capable of, that you just like, listen, there's actually nothing that can stop you.
I'm not proud of myself. I think I would argue that I've never been proud of anything. I'm absolutely delighted that Birtenshaw has grown the way it's grown.
Yeah.
I'm privileged to be part of it, and actually being part of it enriches my life.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm proud, because that seems too boastful, and I'm just the bullshit little Belfast boy that was in the right place at the right time and didn't take no for an answer and sees failure as a learning experience. So I've kept pushing and pushing and pushing. What has changed though, and I know that I'm not stupid, and I know that I can deliver quality services which are cost effective for local authorities. I've proven to local authorities that I can save them money if they work with us. I've proven to local authorities and to families that we can transform the lives of children with learning disability and autism, that they can achieve more than anyone ever thought possible by accessing our services.
Let me ask you this question, David, which is a bit of a left field one, but by doing all these things for other people, have you actually ever stopped back and have you actually ever dealt with what went on with you? And actually kind of, look, have you been to see a counsellor? Have you been to, you know what I mean? Because it's like, there's only so much that you can kind of, it's great helping all people, it needs to be more of it, but have you ever thought to yourself, look, I need to kind of think about, you know, because you need to heal.
Yeah.
And have you healed? I don't know.
Yeah. It's an interesting one. When I was younger, I didn't have any support, so, you know, it was about what I could manage myself. But one of the decisions that I made at 16, 17, when I had that turning point, you know, when that youth worker said to me, yeah, you've had a shit time, what are you going to do about it? One of the things I knew was that I needed to deal with some of the things that happened to me. So although, you know, it took me 10 years to get into social care and then social work, during that 10 years, I accessed counselling. I started thinking about mindfulness. I kind of did a bit of yoga and I did a bit of meditation. And actually when I started training to become a qualified social worker, by that stage, and actually by the time I got into social care, I thought I was healed. I thought that all of my experience from childhood were absolutely the past. I thought then that, you know, it was history. I kind of didn't allow any space in my mind to think, does it still have an impact on me, other than a positive one as a driving force to do what I want to do and help others. And for a long time, I actually thought that was the case. And I think the reason behind that was that, you know, my career was going well and I got to go to university, and then I realized that I actually was capable of learning, and I've actually discovered that not only am I not stupid, I'm highly academic. I'm probably more intelligent than average people.
1,000,000%.
You know, kind of the other end of the scale.
Then a lot more intelligent than me.
I don't think so. But you know, thinking that as a child of being told I was stupid, to you know, now knowing that I can do academic stuff at the highest level.
But say you've also got this dark thing that's happened to you.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that I kind of thought things were going really, really well. My career was going well. I took over Birtenshaw. It was difficult to start with, and then you know, other things in my life. By this stage, I was in a relationship, so everything seemed to be going really, really well. So it was almost as if the early experiences weren't having any impact at all, and it didn't feel as if they were. It didn't feel as if they were at all. So I felt that I'd developed like emotional resilience and a real strength. I suppose if you meet me, most people would say this about me, I'm a very strong character. So I would say I'm like emotionally strong and resilient, but I would also say I've got integrity and I've got good set of values and good principles. But I thought I was doing really well. But in September 2016, I had a personal event that really rocked my world again. And don't forget, this is this is a couple of years after the Birtenshaw's flagship had opened in Bromley Cross, and by this stage we were well into the project with Liverpool, and it was year 4 of Birtenshaw being profit making, if you like. But at that point in September 16, I'd been in a relationship for 22 years. and that relationship ended suddenly, and that decision wasn't mine. I didn't see it coming, and it absolutely shook me to the core, and I didn't deal with it very well. It sent me spiraling back into a dark place, somewhere that I never thought I would go again. I started drinking excessively again. So most of my adult life, I've got an Irish accent, for God's sake. I'm going to be a drinker, I'm to really. But through most of my adult life, I've always liked to drink, but it's always been, managed, if you like. It's never been over the top. I never had a drink problem. I wouldn't say it was excessive. But after my relationship ending, it did get very excessive again and spiral down. And that had a major impact on my sense of well-being and mental health. And I started to go back into that dark place of feeling hopeless again. Yeah, it felt like a self-destructive downward spiral.
Yeah. That you're not worthy again.
And really they brought all of those memories back.
Yeah.
It must be my fault.
Yeah.
I'm not worthy. If somebody's ended a relationship with me, it must be me. It's my fault. I've done something wrong or not done the right things. But I knew it was spiraling down, and I was trying to work out what the hell do I do? How do I get some support here? So from September 2016, really spiraling down, and I kind of thought, I'm going to reach out to my brothers and sisters and some of my close friends. And maybe this was a mistake, but when I reached out, I told them I was feeling pretty crap and, drinking a lot. And I also told them that I was coming home from work. To the outside world, I was still a successful businessman, but I was coming home from work and was locking the door and closing the curtains and getting the drink out, and just waiting for the next morning and hoping I could make it back into work the next day and function. Just trying to get through again, really. But yeah, Birtenshaw was still being successful and still growing, still developing. But when I was reaching out, I wasn't getting the support that I thought I would get, and I felt I was getting sort of pushed away. And that kind of sensation of not being listened to and being pushed away got worse. And that resulted, so over about a year, that resulted in that downward spiral kind of gathering pace. I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but in October 2017, I tried to take my own life. And that's something that anyone who knew me at the time would not have thought possible, because I was running a multi-million-pound successful organisation. I was helping, by this stage I'd got into helping other businesses develop their businesses as well, other businessmen and businesswomen. So to the outside it was really successful, but what was going on in my head was completely messed up. I don't remember doing this, but I put something on Facebook on the night that I took an overdose, and somebody worked out that it was like serious. Now my expectation was I was never going to wake up, and I'm not somebody that's used to failure.
Yeah.
So this is a double-edged sword. I woke up in hospital. So that the person who saw that post, and I don't remember doing the post, I was too out of it, but somebody saw the post, called the police. The police broke into my house. I was taken to hospital. I woke up in hospital, and my first thought was, shit, there is an afterlife. What am I going to do now? Where am I? That was the first thought.
Really?
The second thought was, shit, I failed. I'm not used to failure. And that kind of failure, when I set out to do something like that, I just didn't expect not to see it through.
You saw the post? Did you?
No idea.
Really?
Still to this day, don't know. But I'm glad that they did. That was at the point where I really needed to make some more difficult decisions. So that was another cathartic moment or epiphany or turning point or whatever you want to call it. So at that point I made a decision that I was going to change my circle completely. So I actually contacted friends and family who had been reaching out to and said to them, because you've not been helpful and not supportive, you're out of my circle.
Oh, go on, David. That is so... I love that, mate.
I literally reduced my circle to 2 people.
Who were the 2 people?
2 friends, Mark and Debbie. And someone that you know quite well, who, in a kind of different way, I know him, Ryan Armitage. Mark and Debbie were the only 2 friends I kept in my life, and Ryan was... I see Ryan as a really good friend, but we have a different...
We're having this conversation the other day. How do you judge to have somebody in your life? How do you judge that they're right?
In the past, the way I used to look at it was that I was lucky if somebody allowed me in their life.
Yeah.
So I thought that that was... If somebody allowed me in or had any connection with me, that I was the lucky one. Whereas now, the way I think about it is, I don't want people in my life if they're not positive. I want people that I can support, but who support me. I want people that I can build up, but who build me up. I want people who recognize my success, but I can recognize their success. I want it to be a positive... My tribe has to be positive now. If it's not positive, they can fuck off.
Yeah, I'm all about that.
And you know what? The number of people that I've cut out and felt good about it, and the positive difference that's made in the last couple of years is absolutely incredible.
Brave move that though, isn't it?
Again, at the time, it didn't feel brave. It just felt like it's the way to survive. Yeah. I'd got to the point of thinking, Christ, if I was prepared to take my own life because I felt so shit, I've got to do something to feel better. And that was the first decision, changing my circle. So 2 friends, Mark and Debbie and Ryan Armitage, were the only people I allowed in, that's all. And then I started to connect with somebody on social media. It wasn't you, by the way. This was before I started to connect with you on social media. Another guy called Simon. And I've told Simon all of this since, but he didn't know at the time. I don't know how I first came across him. I think I was looking for self-help stuff and meaningful stuff and maybe mindfulness stuff, things that I could use to kind of help me get through the situation that I was in. Because I was spending an awful lot of time on my own, and I'd cut out all these people from my life, so it was kind of just me, really. I was going to work, I was still functioning at work, and nobody at work knew what was going on. And I need to say, and I need to really stress this, I'm delighted, I'm really pleased that I failed, because my life now is better than it's ever been. At any point in my life, it's better now.
What struck me about what you said before there, David, is the fact that you, more than anybody, understands what loneliness is. For you to get rid of all these people, what must be going through your head is, I'm going to be lonely again. I
knew I was going to be lonely, but I knew that I wanted to do that, and that was preferable to having people in my life who were not supportive, pulling me down, and not being helpful. And I knew I needed to create a new circle. So there was only those 3 people that I've mentioned kind of still in my orbit, if you call it that. And then I started to connect with this guy, Simon, on social media. I didn't know at the time he lives 3 miles away from me. Get that?
Really?
I thought he lived in Australia or something. I had no idea where he was based, really. That's the power of social media, isn't it? You just don't know where people are, and you can connect with people that are really close. So I started to stalk him. One of those people that reads the post, doesn't react. But I was getting a lot from the stuff he was putting out. And in many ways, I think it saved my life. It kind of took me from, just coming out of hospital thinking, am I going to do this again? It got me from that point to thinking, absolutely not. I'm never going to do that again. I know I'm never going to do that again, but there's other things I need to sort out. And Simon had no idea. I was looking at his post. He had no idea who I was or anything else. Then I started to gradually and then I started to comment, and then we started to chat on social media. And then randomly in October 2018, he invited me to go to this business event in London. I've never met the guy before at this point. But I felt we'd created a bond on social media, and he'd really helped me through a very difficult patch. He invited me to go to this event in London. I think, I don't even know what it's about. He said it's the Gary V event. Now, some people listening to this podcast might know who Gary V is, Gary Vaynerchuk. I'd never heard of him. But Simon invited me to go. He said, I'm trying to get a group of us. I've got 16 tickets. I'm trying to bring a group together, 16 people. I thought, do you know what? Why not? Why not go? I've no idea what it's about. Don't know who this Gary V is, but I want to meet Simon. I'll meet some other people. Let's see how it goes. Those 3 days were another epiphany. I met Simon. Actually, we were on the same train. We didn't, because I still didn't know at this stage where he lived, but we were on the same train from Preston to London. And he was walking up the carriage. I'm looking at him thinking, I'm sure that's the guy I talked to on social media. And I got my phone out as he was walking up the carriage. I thought, fucking is he? I'm looking at him thinking,
that's random, that.
Seriously. And as he came towards me, he went, Simon? And he pointed at me and he, David? And he just came over and he picked me up and gave me a big bear hug. And from that moment to now, we've bonded. And we're very different people. I mean, there's like more than 20 years difference in age. And, I'm a very different person. And one of the things about Simon is he was a very, very high profile GB gymnast in a previous life. I didn't know anything about that either at the time, but we just bonded. There was just something that we bonded. And the people that I met and he introduced me to at that event in London, a group of them I bonded with as well, and we're still in contact. And that became the start of a really new, healthy, positive circle. And that actually started to make me think about the success it had at Birtenshaw. And yes, Birtenshaw's continuing to grow, and it's at the point now where it can continue to do that and continue to help.
Your personal branding?
Yeah, it's the personal brand now. And I started to think about, I've achieved all that success. It's a business, but it's helping lots of disabled children. And then I started to think, actually, what I want to do now is help other business people. So for the past year, I've been growing my own circle again and growing my own personal brand. And I've opened a new business called Breakthrough Success. And I want that to be about all the things that I've had to deal with. So, I mentioned earlier about mindset. Yeah. I want to help other business owners deal with whatever mental or emotional issues they might be dealing with. Let's face it, given what I've been telling you today, there's not much I haven't dealt with. Yeah. And there's not a lot that people are going to be able to say to me that will either surprise me or shock me, or that I can't say, have you thought about this? Have you tried that? So I want to help business owners with their mindset. Which is
a big thing, mate, because it's like, when it comes to people starting up doing businesses and the fear of it, and, one of the biggest things is like promoting your business, you have to get on video, and it's the self-esteem to do videos and the confidence to, there's mindset's one of the biggest things. And I see a lot of small businesses fail because they don't get that bit right. Yeah.
A lot of businesses have got a good product or a good service, but the mindset of the business owner isn't right. So one of the things that I think about, one of the things I've been doing this past year, is thinking about fix the person, fix the business, or fix the mind, fix the business. Yeah. So I've been working with business owners now over the past year, helping them with emotional issues, psychological issues, mindset issues,
like that, mate.
And then looking at how that can impact on their business. And it's no different from my vision in Birtenshaw to transform the lives
of people.
It's still about people, but with Birtenshaw, it's about transforming the lives of disabled children and their families. With Breakthrough Success, it's about transforming the lives of business owners and therefore transforming their businesses, which in turn will transform the lives of their lives, their families' lives, their employees' lives. So it's still about people, it's still about transforming lives, but it's a different kind of way of doing it. Yeah. And when I went to that event in London, I just thought, I'd never been at that kind of business event before, because I've always worked in the social care or the education space or the disability space. So it's always been more kind of social care orientated rather than business orientated. Even though Birtenshaw is a multi-million-pound business, I've never really gone into business events and business networking. Went to that one and thought, bloody hell, this is brilliant. I absolutely love it. I'm having a great time. And I came away from that thinking I want to do a bit more of this. But one of the people that I heard speak at that event is a guy called Justin James. And I wanted more of that. I resonated with everything he said from the moment he started speaking. And I thought, I need to connect with this guy. I need to find a way to speak to him. I was able to do that. I'm now part of Justin James's Academy and Inner Circle. In fact, a few weeks ago, he invited me to speak with him at a business event in Amsterdam. I don't speak fluent Dutch, but I managed to speak some Dutch to them, which was a great icebreaker. You know, this business event was being held in English, but my first words were in Dutch, which was a real icebreaker for that group of people, all these business people. But I got to tell my story, and my story about Birtenshaw, and my story about breakthrough success, and some of the things I've had to go through. So he's now my mentor, my main mentor, my business mentor. And through him, I've been able to expand my business networks. I've had opportunities to speak on stages that I never expected to get, network with other really high-profile business people throughout the UK. And I'm now in a position where I want to take forward that side of my business life, breakthrough success side.
Now, let me just, the spiraling out of control bit, and then you got rid of all them people around you.
Yeah.
What else did you do to actually, did you do anything else?
Yeah.
Because obviously, that's dark as a motherfucker, that, mate.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
What else do you do to heal yourself? Counselling?
I accessed some more counselling, but a lot of what I was doing at that point that's how I connected with Simon, really. I was looking for self-help techniques. Simon runs an organisation called the Nourish Group. They do a lot of self-help stuff. They do retreats, a lot of mindfulness stuff. Yeah. He does a lot of physical stuff as well. He does these like Muay Thai retreats and stuff. I'm not going to one of those. He'd kill me. I did Muay Thai when I was younger, but yeah, I've tried to do it now. And get killed. Anyway, so but what I started to do was the mindfulness stuff, and then I started to think about reducing the alcohol. I didn't take it as far at that stage as trying to say I'm going to stop it, because I knew I couldn't. I was relying on it as a bit of a crutch too much, but I knew I needed to get back into exercise and try to get fitter again. Since the relationship ended. And I'd been drinking really heavily. I'd not been eating well either. I'd been eating takeaways and processed food. I'd put on a lot of weight. So I knew I needed to start eating healthy. I knew I needed to start looking after my physical health better, as well as my mental health, get more fresh air. I mean, I'd been basically coming home and locking myself in the house. So a couple of things that I thought about were get a dog. That would get me out more. So I got 2 instead to make sure that I definitely went out. So yeah, earlier on this year, I spent a couple of months choosing the right kind of breed and everything else. And don't forget, I'm running 2 businesses. I'm a busy person. I'm away a lot. I speak elsewhere. I'm at events in London. I didn't want to get dogs and not be able to look after them or have somebody take care of them when I'm not around. So I did a lot of research around different breeds, what would be suitable for me, but also who could look after them for me. And I've got an absolutely fabulous dog sitter that can walk them or look after them during the day, or they can stay at her house if I'm away. But yeah, in April of this year, I got 2 French bulldogs, Bosco and Fergus. I don't walk a lot with them during the week, but I try to get out and get some fresh air with them. But at the weekends, we on average do about 50 kilometres now over Saturday,
that's
Sunday.
That's all part of your healing process. I mean, because that's one of mine. It's just like walking and getting out in the mountains and stuff is my...
Yeah, absolutely. I've always loved walking in the mountains. When I was in my relationship, that was one of our things, travel. But wherever we travelled, whether it was in the UK or elsewhere, walking in the hills and the mountains, or by the shore. Sorry, excuse me. I grew up by the shore. So that was something I always wanted to do. Walk by the shore and coastlines. So yeah, getting out and getting more fresh air and doing more walking. But I knew that if I had a dog, it would force me to do that. But having 2 obviously gets me out quite a bit. And although they're fairly small, they're only 9 months old now. There's days we can do 20, 25 kilometres. And that's always either at a fast walk pace or jogging. And I've now got them doing little sprints. So getting them out has got me out.
So you've put all these tiny little bit of things in place, from your eating to cutting down on alcohol to a thing. Well, do you... Because obviously, like I love how honest you are, mate, and just, that's one of the things, like, I just, like, can hold my hands up and just say how amazing it is. Because not everybody can be like this. How do you deal with what happened to you when you were little now, then? How does that affect your life right now?
It doesn't anymore. I feel completely healed. It almost feels as if Yeah, as an adult, when I was in a relationship and everything felt rosy, I thought I was healed then. But in the past year, I feel as if I'm a new person. Life is better than it ever was, and
you look good, mate. You look really good. Your skin looks really good. You're like smiling a lot more than the last time I seen you.
Well, the interesting thing is, a lot of people have told me about my skin looking good and stuff, and I know, I'm a bloke, so it's not. I don't have a skin regime or anything. But what it did do, as well as thinking about eating more healthily, was, the dogs and everything with exercise. But then I started to think, I'm going to have to cook food. I'm going to have to stop eating processed food. And then I took that a step further. So in August.
So you got a degree in nutrition now?
No. But I started working with somebody who does. Really? So in August, I started talking to a nutritionist who's also a homeopath. And I started asking, what can I do to cut down on some of the meds I'm on? What can I do to like detox a little bit? What can I do to, make things overall healthier? So in August, I started this, I think it's called Purify. But I started a detox program. So I started cutting out alcohol completely for a while. So I had 3 months without any alcohol. So now I'm still like drinking, but only occasionally and not as much.
You're not drinking to forget. You're drinking because it's a.
I'm drinking because I want to drink and enjoy it, and enjoy the party or enjoy the occasion. Not trying to block anything out. So I'm not using it as a crutch the way I was in the past. So it's a healthier relationship with alcohol. I then started to cut out processed food and sugars. And then in September, I went on a detox, which included like various supplements, but also this like a powder stuff that you mix with water, and it cleanses your system. I mean, to be honest, it's not pleasant. It looks and smells like green pond water, but it really does work. It just cleanses your whole system. So
you look at your total self like holistically now, and you really look after every aspect from your spiritual. Because I mean, should we talk about the ayahuasca trip?
The what?
The ayahuasca trip.
What's that then?
Didn't you go to Peru and have the ayahuasca, the DMT?
I went to. Oh yeah, the coca leaves and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was in Peru. I was in Peru. That was part of me thinking about the wellness and doing things that I wanted to do. So I wanted to go to Machu Picchu and I wanted to climb Machu Picchu. But I had the experience that the leaves maybe had too many of the leaves. But I did the Machu Picchu trek. Got to so that was 3 or 4 days, and then I did there's an optional thing that's called Machu Picchu mountain climb. I did that the next day, and I didn't at that stage. I hadn't lost as much weight as I have now, and I wasn't doing as much activity as I am now. So I mean, this is only July this year, but I just wasn't as fit. But I really wanted to do it. But in the group that I was with, there were 2 American guys, really fit guys, but lovely guys that tuned into the fact that I was struggling a bit, and they went at my pace. They encouraged me the whole way, and they helped me get to the top of the mountain. So I did summit Machu Picchu mountain the day after I got to Machu Picchu city. Then the day after that, we thought, okay, we'll do the Peru thing, and we just.
I was well jealous when I seen your pictures on Instagram. We're just like, oh, you motherfucker!
I know.
I can't believe that.
Yeah, you can. Actually, the Machu Picchu bit was, I thought, best day of my life. Then the following day doing the mountain, thought, no, this is the best day of my life. And then a couple of days later, I went into, I can't remember how to pronounce it, some bloody desert in the south of Peru. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it. It's a big long name. But yeah, I was in this desert that just went on for miles and miles and miles. I've never been in the center of a desert. You can't see anything but sand. And it just felt completely isolated. And we were able to watch the sun go down over one horizon as the moon came up over the other.
That's special,
I thought, fucking hell, what? Look this way, it's the sun. Look that way, it's the moon. And yet there was, we'd been trekking through the desert. And it was loads of chit-chat and all the rest of it. But then when we sat down to watch the sunset and the moon come up, it was kind of like an otherworldly experience. It just went...
a moment you'll never forget.
Totally quiet. Everybody just sat in silence. And this beautiful natural phenomenon. We were all kind of like a bit tearful, to be honest. But in between the desert and the mountains. So the few days in between, we'd gone off into this village and we'd done the traditional Peru thing with a couple of shamans and stuff.
Yeah.
So
what was that experience like?
At the time, all I remember was feeling euphoric.
Yeah.
And everything just seemed like bigger, and better, and brighter, and kind of felt like being back on cocaine, but but in a good way.
Before I finish the podcast, right? The question I want to ask as well is how you met Ryan, and how you came to a decision of having him as the chairman of Birtenshaw, which just seemed ridiculous to me, just because like we're balloon all the time. But then I just see this other side to him that just like totally just like blows my mind, just like you. And you tell me how you, and I'm just like,
Yeah, I know.
It's just, and I'll be honest, I'll put my hands on the table. I said there is absolutely no way I could do what you've done or what Ryan's done.
If you can't really say that, because if you're not in that position, you don't know what you would do.
Yeah.
If you'd been in my position as a 7-year-old or my position as a 12-year-old. Yeah. But I appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, no, I don't. Honestly, David, I think I can actually say no, I couldn't. I'll be honest with you. My mind just doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. I've got, my path has been set out for me, and I just know full well that it wouldn't have.
I mean, I can't really respond to that. I was in that position, not of my choice. Yeah. But thankfully, I was able to deal with it, and I've been able to deal with quite a few difficult things throughout my life. But yeah, going back to your question, the guy that is the maverick that is my friend Ryan. Actually, we met on social media.
Did you?
We did. I think it was when I first started using Twitter or Instagram. I can't remember which one. Now I'm of an age where when I was sort of younger, computers weren't around. I mean, we didn't have mobile phones. We didn't have the internet. So I'm kind of a bit of a technophobe in some ways. So it was my first forays into using whatever it was, Instagram or Twitter, for Birtenshaw at the time. I was just testing out, like, what kind of things can you say? And I didn't even know how to attach a bloody photograph, and put a post out. Yeah. So it was very sort of simplistic stuff. But anyway, Ryan was...
pestering you?
No, he didn't pester me, to be fair. He reached out at one point, and I think at that stage he was running a company called...
247.
No, I think it was even before that. It was when he was doing education appointments. Right. So what he saw from my post was, like, we had a school, Birtenshaw School. So he reached out to say, do you need any teachers or teaching assistants? I mean, we call them learning support assistants, but that was his question. And I thought, this is some white boy here. He's trying to... Yeah.
That's my first impression of him.
Yeah, some white boy. He sent me a couple more messages. And I said, where are you based anyway? It turned out at the time his office was in Leyland. Yeah. I live in Farrington Moss, which is 2 minutes drive outside Leyland. I thought, might as well just go and meet this idiot. Yeah. See what I think. So I went to his offices in Leyland, and I thought, he kind of knows what he's doing. But my thinking at the time, I mean, this is going back.
What did you think when you first met him? Because he's totally opposite to you, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a very different character to me on the surface. Yeah. Definitely on the surface.
Yeah. And that's the trick.
But I think that even when I first met him, although that was a business meeting, there was something about the core of what is Ryan that I felt connected with what my core. There was just something, despite different people and different ages and from different places and different backgrounds, I felt that there was something about the essence of what is us that connected. Didn't tell him that at the time. I was still giving him a bloody hard time in that business meeting. I thought, he doesn't really know what he's doing. He's trying to sell me a service, and he doesn't really know what it is he's selling me. Or, but I said, look, tell you what, let me test you. Put through some CVs for teachers or teaching assistants. I'll see what the quality is. If I think they're good enough CVs, I'll see the people. If the people are good enough, I'll come back to you and talk about price. But I'm not taking anybody on unless you're going to do a good deal. So if you want me to take that approach, that's fine. So that was kind of more or less the way we looked at it. And I gave him a list of criteria, and I said, if you send any CVs through that don't meet this criteria, I'm not even going to speak to you. I'm not going to do business with you. He sent 3 CVs, and every single one of them met the criteria, which, to be honest, surprised me. I wasn't expecting him to be able to meet the criteria, but he did. I thought, okay, he's done that. Let me meet these people, because we always do like an interview, even for agency staff. So, and I didn't want anyone else in the business to be involved in that. I wanted to do it because I wanted to suss out these people that he was going to put forward. And most of the people that came in that first batch were appointable. They weren't all like top notch or whatever. They weren't going to set the world on fire, but there were people that, if I'd interviewed them through a standard recruitment process, decent people that I could have appointed. I thought, okay, he might actually be able to do something for me here. But what I was looking for was, this was kind of at the start of our growth period. I was looking for a cost-effective way to bring people into the business and to recruit staff. It takes time and energy and money to recruit. So I was looking for a cost-effective sort of solution. Went back to Ryan then and said, look, CVs you put through were good. Met those people, they're appointable. Now I've got to talk money. And then he started talking about, the unit price per hour or per day or whatever it was he said at the time. I went, nah, not doing that. So I said to him what I could afford. And I said, look, I won't fall out with you, but this is my budget. If you can provide me with staff for that budget, we can do business. What I can say is that although that's the maximum I can pay, I know we're about to hit a growth phase, and I know that we can do business for years, and I know that you can make a lot of money out of this. So your return per unit or per person or per day or per hour, whatever way you want to look at it, might not be huge, but the volume will be there over time. And do you know what he said to me?
Go on.
I need to talk to my mum.
Sold. I'm sold if he says that.
And I thought, his mum? What's his mum got to do with it? I had no idea.
Everything.
I had no idea at the time that it was a family business. I had no idea about their values or their ethos or anything else. And he just said, I need to talk to my mum. I thought, bloody hell, businessman, he needs to talk to his mum? I just didn't get it at the time, so that really threw me. But at the same time, it was endearing.
Endearing, that.
Because... I mean, this has gone back, 8 or 9 years. He's, mid-30s now, so he's kind of mid-20s then. And I kind of had a bit of a soft spot for him from the moment I met him. Yeah. I thought, he's a big guy, much bigger than me, but still came across to me as somebody that's quite young. And I always have had this thing about trying to help young people, whether it's the young people within Birtenshaw, young people in my life, young business people. It's just, I've always wanted to try and help them in a way. So I kind of thought, if I can do business with him, I want to do it, but it has to be at the price I can afford. And obviously I wasn't making a huge amount of money at that time. So after that conversation, I think Ryan and Roz came to Birtenshaw and they were having a conversation, and Ryan was trying to get the price up. And I was like, look, I'm not going to fall out with you, but I've told you what I can afford. It's entirely up to you. And Ryan looked across the table at Roz and said, what do you think? And Roz looked back at Ryan and said, it's up to you. So he said, let's do it. So we signed our first contract, and that was with education appointments, and then we moved into a contract with 24/7 professional health, and of course more recently that's now Teslam. So Ryan and Teslam have been providing staff for me at Birtenshaw, across education care services, across all of our services really, probably for the last 8 years, so on a continuous basis.
When did you decide to make him?
So after we signed our first contract and he started putting staff forward, he and I started to obviously talk more. And the more I talked to him, the more I thought, there's more about him than he knows. There's more about him than he gives himself credit for. And I don't know how I feel about me saying this. I don't care. I'm going to say it anyway. He doesn't think he's very bright because he doesn't have an education, like a university education. Yeah. But he's streetwise and he's life-wise. He's got he's got intelligence, but he thought because he hadn't got an education, he doesn't have intelligence.
And that's why you can relate to it.
And I got it. I really got it, and I got him, and I like him, and I like working with him. Yeah. And I thought, do you know what? He's really putting staff through, and he's not making as much money. He's put a lot of staff through to Birtenshaw, but he's not making as much money as if he was putting them through to another business. So he must have some kind of interest in what we do. So I just randomly said to him one day, how do you feel about joining the board? And he said, I haven't got the experience, don't know anything about it, wouldn't know what to do, don't like being in those kind of meetings. I said, so when are you joining? There wasn't, back to that I don't take no kind of thing. And I just said to him, look, you'll learn as you go, and actually being on the board at Birtenshaw, you might learn a lot that will help you deal with some of the businesses that you want to deal with and you want to grow your business by aligning yourself with. So I persuaded him to join the board. He had to go through a process. Like it's not just my decision. So it's just like I say he's joining the board and that's it. There has to be a decision. And of course, because his company we're providing staff, there's a conflict of interest that we've had to declare, and it's on the conflict of interest register, and it's declared a Companies House and Charity Commission, all that kind of stuff. So we've had to manage all that as well. I think it was in 2014 that he joined the board as a trustee. A trustee is basically a non-executive board member, so it's somebody that gives their time for free to sit on your board. And 2014 and I don't know why I did it to him, 2014 and 2015 were the two worst years that Birtenshaw has ever had in relation to the board. Our board was dysfunctional at the time.
What do you mean by that? How do you choose on the board?
What you're supposed to do is have a recruitment process, and then the rest of the board team make a decision about who's appointable and who's not. What invariably happens is people like me, a chief executive, either recommends or doesn't somebody that is interested in being a board member. At Birtenshaw, I'm now effectively the decision maker. The board will agree with me or not agree with me, but if I recommend somebody, they generally appoint. That's not the way it should be, but it's how we find it works best.
What happens if the people on the board don't like you as a person?
Get rid of them. So during 2014 and 15, that was the case. We ended up with people on the board who I just didn't get on with. But legally, I run the company. They don't. And when there's issues with people who are on the board, you have to try and work to try and resolve that and sort it out. But these people were being deliberately difficult, deliberately obstructive. And then it got to the point where I had to raise a formal complaint about one of them because of the way he was behaving towards me. I then had to raise formal complaints with the Charity Commission and Companies House about the fact that these people were not using due diligence and following the codes of conduct for people on a board. That led to a big investigation. Behind the scenes, so Ryan joined the board when all this was happening. So he joined the board, I think,
just as all this...
Yeah, it kind of kicked off. It wasn't his fault.
Yeah.
But he came out onto the board when this was all kind of going pear-shaped. But because I trusted him, and because I felt that he had a good heart. And
he's got the same ethics, integrity, values.
And because of that, absolutely. I think if you cut us down the middle, you'd see the same things, the same values, same principles. There'd be more of him, obviously, because he's so much bigger. But I started talking to him about
what's going on,
what was going on, and what we might be able to do about it. I then was able to put Ryan in touch with a lawyer who was acting on behalf of the company, who knew about some of the stuff and had been in contact with the Charity Commission and Companies House. Ryan and I think it was one, maybe two other members of the board started speaking to this lawyer behind the scenes and developed a strategy to resolve the issue. But that strategy was to effectively remove all of the members of the board who were toxic. I mean, there was one board meeting I remember. One of these particular people was literally screaming at me and telling me he didn't have to listen to anything I said and he could do whatever the fuck he liked. And one of my deputies at this stage, by this stage, had 2 senior members, two deputies. They were both in the room, and one of them said, "You cannot speak to the chief executive like that. It's completely unacceptable." And he told her to fuck off as well. And we were thinking, this is just not the behaviour.
Is he gone?
He's gone.
See you later, pal.
Exactly. But we enjoyed how we were able to get rid of him.
Good.
That was at the point where I said to Ryan, this has to be pushed now. It really has to be pushed. Ryan actually came back to the building that night after everybody left. He came back and said, I can't stand that any longer, and this can't go on any longer. So we really started to think about the strategy. It was bullying, yeah, you're absolutely right. Some of them were bullying me, some of them were bullying my deputies. When they started bullying me, I thought, I can deal with this. When they started bullying my deputies, I thought, too far. And when it was having an impact on them, I knew that would have an impact on the business. I thought, I'm not putting up with this. I'll do whatever it takes to get rid of them. And actually at the time I remember saying, I will get rid of them, and if I don't, it'll be over my dead body kind of thing. So I was going to do anything it took. I put myself in a very vulnerable position in many ways, but I wasn't prepared to tolerate it. So when I had that conversation with Ryan, and he was at the point of saying, I can't deal with this any longer either. They had the conversations with the lawyer behind the scene. They developed a strategy. The strategy was basically that they were going to call what's called an extraordinary meeting, but it had to be timed in a certain way. And what the lawyer's suggestion was that it was timed, that the invitation for that meeting went out at 5 o'clock, 1 minute to 5 actually, on a Friday, and the meeting was called for 8 a.m. on the Monday, so that no one could call another meeting in between, and that way there was no opportunity for anybody else to do anything. But that when the invitation went out, it needed to say what the order of business was going to be. And when it went out, it said that the first order of business was a proposal which had Ryan's name attached to it for a vote of no confidence in the then chair of the board. The second order of business was a vote of no confidence, and then it went through all of the toxic trustees one by one, and it was going to be a vote of confidence to remove them one by one. And that actually went out. It was just before Christmas 2015. So it had been going on during 2014, 2015, the first 2 years Ryan was on the board. And it was actually the Monday of Christmas week that this meeting took place. 8 o'clock on the Monday morning, Christmas week. So Ryan and the other trustee that had been working with were on one side of the room. The lawyer was at the top of the table. Myself and one of my deputies were on another side of the table. And the people who were going to be voted off were effectively outside because they weren't allowed to come into the room because there was going to be a vote of no confidence. They had to come in one at a time. Midnight the night before, so midnight Sunday night, the then chair, submitted a resignation letter. So that was done and dusted. And that was the critical tipping point, because the strategy was that we felt that she wouldn't be able to handle it and would resign. And that changed the numbers. And it meant that everything else then would automatically have a majority. So that the strategy that had been developed included the tactics of creating more numbers in favour of removing these people than against. But that also meant that because she had submitted her resignation and the meeting had to start, that when the lawyer started the meeting, she said to Ryan, well, you've called this meeting, so you're chairing it. So that was Ryan didn't know that was going. I knew, but I didn't tell him because I thought if I told him, I knew he wouldn't turn up if I told him, so I didn't tell him.
That's a big deal, that, isn't it?
So, but the lawyer was chairing it really, but he was on paper as the chair, and he had to actually say the things out loud. So he had to say the meeting started, and then he had to say the first order of business was a vote of no confidence in the chair, but the chair has resigned, so that's no longer valid. And then he had to say the next order of business is a vote of no confidence in, and he had to say that person's name, and he had to call them into the room. That person is the one that I've just talked about that was bullying me and that screamed at me in a meeting. he came into the room, and when he saw me and my deputy, and it was the deputy who challenged him, he started kicking off, and he started screaming at all of us, "You fucking cannot be in this room," all this kind of stuff. So the lawyer just sat there, let him scream and shout and scream and shout, and then she pointed out exactly why legally we were in the room, and he still said, "I challenge it," and all the rest of it. And she said, "Okay, let's call a vote. Those in favour of the chief executive and my deputy being in the room, say aye." And obviously Ryan and everyone else, they said aye. So he had no choice but to accept that they'd done it legally, done a vote. We were entitled to be in the room anyway, and the lawyer knew that, which is why we were there. But he didn't want us in the room because he knew there was going to be a vote of no confidence in him. He then tried to argue about why he should be able to stay, even though he knew there was going to be more people voting against him. And I got to hear all of his sad excuses. And then once he'd finished, the lawyer said to him, "Anything else?" And at that point, he didn't have anything else. He said, "Can I bring my representative in?" And the lawyer said, "Under paragraph whatever of legislation, whatever, you don't have the right to be representative." No. So that was that done and dusted. And then she said, "Given that you've said everything you've got to say, I'm now going to ask the chair." So that was back to Ryan. "I'm now going to ask the chair to call the vote of no confidence," which Ryan then did. And the vote of no confidence was against this guy, and he then had to be removed from the building. So I had the satisfaction of watching him being physically escorted off the premises. But we went through that process systematically, and Ryan had to read out the names of each person until it was done. And at the end of that meeting, the lawyer said to Ryan, "By default, you're now chair of Birtenshaw." The chief executive will have to, and Ryan's going, "What? What?" This was Monday and Christmas week, and it couldn't have been like watching these people being removed, these toxic people. It was so fabulous. But the lawyer said to Ryan, the chief executive, so me, "We'll have to instigate a process now to either appoint a new permanent chair or to ratify the decision that you're chair." And we had a meeting in, I think it was the first week of January, and that was when Ryan was formally appointed as the chair, and he's been the chair ever since. And we were able to then build the board back up. So all the toxic people were removed. We built it back up with a really positive board, a really supportive board, a board that wants Birtenshaw to thrive. And
that's about people.
It's about people. It's about the people we support. It's about the people we employ. It's about the people we don't yet support, but we will support in the future. So about it growing and expanding. So Ryan's been on the board for 5-6 years, but been chair since December 2015.
When he told me, I was just like, "There's no way somebody would accept you to be on a board."
When Ryan
Not
is
the head,
he's
as
still
well, the chair.
He still is Ryan. He still brings his personality, but he brings his realness. And you know, he chairs the meeting. He starts it. He tells people to shut up. And you know, other people might sort of like tap something or say, "Can we come to order?" or whatever. Ryan just goes, "Right, shut up," and we're going to start the meeting.
Ever since I've met him, mate, and I know it's going to sound really weird, but our anniversary is on the 22nd of this month. That's when I first met him. He's always talked so highly of you, and always said to me, "Look, Tim, you need to meet David." And from this podcast, mate, I totally understand why now, because I feel that if you cut me in half, we'd be the exact same makeup as you and
That's
Ryan.
so powerful.
And I think it's important that together we send this message out to people, mate. Honestly, I can't tell you how proud and privileged I am to tell your story on this. I think everything you've been through, mate, I think it's sick. I love the dark times, you know. I just so resonate with people with darkness.
Yeah.
You know, I just like, there's nothing wrong with people being silver spoon fed and what's it, but I just can't connect with them. I can't. You don't understand. They don't understand. I feel, and I'm not being derogatory to people, but I feel people are soft in this day and age. And I like people who've been through hardships and have to graft through life to get where they are. And it's honestly, mate, I can't tell how privileged I am to tell your story on here, mate. No, honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure listening to it.
I mean, I appreciate the opportunity.
If there's anything that I can do to help your business, to be honest, mate, you don't need anybody apart from yourself after this. But like, you know, if there's anybody out there struggling with a small business or they want to get in touch with it, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, they can get in touch with me either through Birtenshaw or through Breakthrough Success. Birtenshaw's dead easy to find on the socials, or on the website. My own social media is just my name, so David Reid, then 0203, or they can email me at Breakthrough Success. So it's David at breakthrough-success.co.uk.
Amazing, mate. Again, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for the opportunity. It's been lovely to talk to you and share it.
Goodbye, everybody.